So previously we started looking at explicit formula. And the explicit formula, we found our common difference, we found our common ratio, and we basically used the information we had from our sequence and determined the 50th term or the 60th term or the 25th term. So that explicit formula just kind of quickly allows us to find just any term in our sequence. So now recursive actually does deal with sequences as well. But for a recursive, kind of what the name implies, is you're finding your next term from using the previous term. So basically, if you know the second term, you use that to find the third term, and you use that one, the third term, to find the fourth term, and then you use the fourth term to find the fifth term, etc. So with a recursive, you're basically just kind of figuring out what's happening each time, and you have a starting point, and you just kind of add your common difference or multiply your common ratio in order to get to the next one. So recursive formulas I have defined here is finding a new term based off of the previous term. Alright, so let's dive into some of these. Now, normally when you guys see one of these problems, there's going to be more to it. I was just trying to be simple on here. But it's always going to tell you your a sub 1, which is your first term. Okay, so our a sub 1 is our first term. And then basically it gives you guys the equation. And the equation, honestly, all you're really interested in is figuring out what the change is to get to the next one, because that's what you're going to do with your pattern. Now, in this one, let's see, this one on the left, I'm going to put we're going to find, oops, I have the wrong thing there. Let's say we're going to find a sub 5. Okay. Now, this is what I always do for these. You can make these problems into really, really long problems with a lot of work and a lot of steps and all that stuff. I'm not going to do that to you. Okay, so when I go through and do these, I basically just list what I have first, which is my a sub 1. Even though it looks like a 9, my a sub 1 is a 5. And I just kind of keep the list going until I get to that number, whatever it's asking me to find. So I started at A1, so then I'm going to go to A2, A3, A4, and A5. Okay? And all you really have to do at that point, because A5 is our stopping point, because that's what we were trying to find, is we want to look at this equation. Now, this part right here, the a of n minus 1, it just means the previous term. So, basically, you're going to take your previous term, which in our case was our a sub 1 is 5. So, we're going to take our previous term, and we're going to add 2 to it. Okay, that's all you're doing, is you're looking for the function and figuring out what's happening. In this one, we're adding 2 every time. So, we started at 5, means our next one's going to be 7. Add another 2, we get 9. Add another 2, we get 11. Add another 2, we get 13. That's our solution. A of 5 is equal to 13. That's a recursive formula. You have a starting point, you look at the formula to figure out what you're doing to get to the next term, then you get the next term. And then you just follow that pattern until, in this last case, till a sub 5. So let's look at the one on the right. So this one says a of 1 is 7, so I know that's where I'm starting with. So a of 1 is equal to 7. And it gives me my formula, and then I just need to kind of figure out where I'm going. I need to get to a sub 4. So there's a sub 2, there's a sub 3. Erase that because it looks like a z. And then a sub 4. Alright, so again, at that point, we have our starting point. We have a of 1 is equal to 7. That's our starting point. We just have to look at the formula and figure out what is our change. Well, our change this time is we're adding a negative 3, which is just like subtracting 3. So, my a of 1 is 7. If I take 3 away from that, I get 4. 4 take away 3 gives me 1. 1 take away 3 gives me negative 2. And there's my solution. Okay, so that's a recursive formula. Again, it'll give you your starting point. It'll give you the formula. You just have to recognize the change. And just keep going until you get to the one that they're looking for. Alright, so if you need anything from this screen, go ahead and get it. Pause the video. I'm going to move screens. Okay, so now we're going to look at one that's a geometric, even though I know it probably looks a little bit weird because it does have the A notation. This was a change in Math 1 to look more like your fourth math kind of notation to it, so when you're dealing with a recursive formula, Math 1 they might use a G, but more than likely they'll use an A, so that's what I'm going to use. Excuse me for you guys. Alright, so in this one we're starting out at A sub 1, which in our case is 4. And let's say we want to find, let's say we want to find A sub 6. Okay? Well, actually I'm going to make that a little smaller because this is a multiplication one, so let's just say we're going to find A of 3. Okay. Alright, so I'll go to A2, A3, that's going to be my stopping point to it. So now I want to look at my function and basically look at what's happening. Again, this is my previous, doesn't tell me anything, just, well, that's our previous one. Now right here we have a 2, and it is right next to that A sub n minus 1. There's no plus sign there between them, there's no minus sign, so that implies multiplication. So basically we're going to take our previous one and we're going to multiply it by 2 to get to the next one. So this one we were at 4. 4 times 2 is 8. We times 2 again, we get 16. So A of 3 is equal to 16. Okay, so there's a geometric version of it. Just look at your function, whether you're dealing with a common difference or a ratio. They may or may not put a dot in between. Like this one I gave you, I did not put a dot in between. But you could have a dot. Let's say, if I can get it to right, like there. But oftentimes it's not. Alright, so if you need anything from this screen, go ahead and get it. I'm going to switch screens. Okay. The other thing you'll see with recursive is sometimes they will give you the formula and they'll say what is the explicit form, or what explicit formula can be used to find the nth term. Now there's two different ways that they can show this. They can do the ones like you looked at in the previous video. Okay, so in our previous video these, it would be, let's say, A of n, and this one we have to figure out what's happening each time. So if I look at this one, going from a 4 to a 7, 7 to 10, 10 to 13, hopefully you could find that you were adding 3 each time. So this one has a common difference of 3. So this would be 3 plus our n minus 1. Okay. And that's what we did in the previous one. In this one we don't know what term we're trying to find, so usually it was always one less than what we were looking for. But this is, excuse me, it is 1:15 in the morning, so you might hear a yawn here or there. But with this one, if you don't have a specific term in the explicit formula that you're trying to find, it is just going to be an n minus 1. You just kind of leave it as that. So that is one way you might see the answer to this. Depends on the question. When you look at your multiple choice, one of them in your homework looks like that. Now, the other thing that they like to do on the exam is they like to give you that answer as a possible option, but they like to simplify it. So in this one, I'm getting rid of the parentheses, as you noticed, because there's no distributive property for this one, so I could get rid of them. And what they'll do sometimes is they'll do that, and then they'll just combine the like terms. So your exam question could have looked like A of n equals, well, 3 minus 1 is 2. Your exam question could have looked like that. These two are actually exactly the same thing. So just be careful. You can kind of notice when you look at your multiple choice, if you see the parentheses and n minus 1, then obviously it's this one right here. If you look at your multiple choice and you don't see in a parentheses and n minus 1, it means that they simplified it out, so it looks something like this. So just be careful. I know, excuse me, I have an example of each one in your homework for this one. So if you get stuck, just let me know.